Hello.
Hi, hello friends.
Sorry again, a little bit of technical issues, and we have sorted it. And
I think this is the second time we are a
yeah,
bit late.
yeah, 5 minutes almost.
Even
And
I had a very hectic day. From morning, I was out for a shoot with our today's special guest, Nitin Michael. So
I
we both
hope
went for a desert drive and got
desert
some
drive.
got some amazing pictures. In fact, of
When I
owls.
am around, nobody goes for any drive, and when
Yeah.
I'm not there, you guys are going.
So once I add Nitin, we'll share more details of what we found. And yeah, friends, welcome back to Paws Trails webinar. Today we have Nitin Michael with us, and he's one of the amazing wildlife photographers. He's from Dubai. He has traveled most of the places and photographed many species. Uh,
Yeah, I'm waiting for it because it's been a long time after catching up, first of all, and on top of that, his experience with mirrorless is amazing. So waiting for some tips
okay, so
on
let me add
mirrorless
Nitin
tips.
here.
Right?
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Nisha.
How are you?
Fine. Hi again, Hermes. I'm fed up of
Hi.
seeing you again and again.
I was saying Nisha about today's.
I know, man. I am still, in that zone. I was just telling somebody I'm still in that zone of the morning. I think Hermie told me like some 10 times that this was really good, right? This was really good, right? And because I don't know, it was something that we go into Kudra or wherever into photograph quite often, but today was completely different. I mean, in the desert, in the dunes, getting to drive firstly ourselves, and that whole point of exploring, looking for something, that anticipation. We started off by seeing a sort of a kestrel pair, mating pair, and then we thought that was it, and we were quite happy even with that. We saw an egret on the dunes, or a gray heron on the dunes, and I think that again was, usually you always see these herons in the water, and then we saw it in the dunes. That was unique. And then of course came the big thing, which we honestly, I don't know whether even Hermie expected to see it. When we went in the morning, we said, we're going exploring, let's see how it goes, maybe we'll have to come back again. And then we saw the phantom of the desert, the pharaoh eagle owl, and that was just
Yeah,
mesmerizing.
and it was peacefully sitting on a tree, very very calm. We were there with that for like 10-15 minutes.
Yeah.
Enough
Yeah.
opportunity to make pictures.
Yeah, and I think it helps that Nisha is not there. It sort of gives us more. So
How can you guys be so mean? First it was little owl. Now this one, all owls when I'm not there.
Yeah,
yeah, I.
Dubai house doesn't like you.
But
That's really
but
mean.
but you have never seen a little owl, is it, Nisha? I thought that's.
She haven't seen anything from Dubai.
Hello.
But now she's no longer from Dubai, so then that's it's fine if she doesn't see anything from Dubai.
That's a plus point. Now, whenever I can come back, whenever I'm going to be there, I'm going to see all of it.
No, but it was amazing. I mean, just those eyes of that owl were so mesmerizing. That orange yellowish eyes that bird has.
This was your first sighting?
I'd never
No.
seen. I'd never seen. Hermie has seen a pharaoh eagle owl, but I've never seen one. So
Great.
And after that, we saw two little owls. Then after that, we saw
a
I can't
vulture.
hear you.
its greatest spotted eagle flying.
I can't hear
We
you.
saw one vulture also on the
We
way
saw a
back.
vulture also.
I can't hear you.
Today was the day. I mean, today was really the day for us. I mean,
Oh, that's great. I'm happy for you guys. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful.
but now we've understood what we've got to do, and I think we're going to explore more.
That's
So
right.
I think that's it. Uh, it's good to it's good to have good gear, but when you can actually get some subject to photograph, that's
Yeah.
a different thing.
Gear definitely is a fact, but then beyond that, you're sporting us definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it should be there.
I think the only way you can get the most out of the gear is if you can actually go out and, thanks to COVID, if there was no COVID, I don't think I'd ever have got a chance to explore this entire UAE and the UAE landscape, because otherwise, the moment you get a chance, you'd want to run out. But I think thanks to COVID, the amount of exploration we've done in UAE.
People are going to kill you guys.
No, I mean,
Dr. K. Anand is saying Nisha is crying on hearing Hermes.
yeah. So I mean, no, I think Nisha has her own. I think she's going to have her own bit of stories to tell us. She's just not.
All right, let's get into the stories of
Yes.
the equipment
Yes.
and
Yes.
your new experiments.
Yes.
Before that, Nitin can give a small intro about himself
Okay.
to the people who doesn't know you.
Yeah. So the people who don't know me, I'm a photographer. I'm just learning. Okay. I'd always like to say I'm still learning.
Everybody is.
Everybody is, yes. Some people aren't, but let's not talk about them. So no, but the point is, yeah. So I've been doing wildlife photography for quite a few years. Got a lot more enthusiastic and inspired by photographers like Nisha and Hermie for the last few years to get into going to more places and practicing a lot more. And in terms of gear and technology also. I started off, I remember, with a 7D Mark II, long back, of course, and then moved on into, trying to experiment with new gear, new different types of gear. And off late, I've over the last 2 years, I've actually moved on into mirrorless specifically, and this whole mirrorless technology. I think as far as Nikon and Canon are concerned, while they were sort of late to jump onto that bandwagon, they are now in there. And for people who with gear, who have already invested in gear from these two brands, now is a good time. And I've been experimenting with them with gear for more than 2 years now. With mirrorless gear from these brands, and that's what I'm here to talk about. I think there's a lot of merit in considering them as a very serious option. I won't say a replacement, but as an option that's definitely worth considering, and it's one that's going to be more or less the future for photographers, irrespective of which brand they use or whatever it is. And that's what it is. I mean, and a lot of times they say until you see the results, it's very difficult to, I think a few years ago, the problem was the number of photographers using mirrorless were lesser. But today it's that's changed, and which is why you have a lot more results to show people and to show them the quality that you can get out of using mirrorless technology, and also to explain what mirrorless technology is. And I think there's a lot of curiosity among people, and as to what is mirrorless, and what's the technology, is it really good, can I use it, will I be able to get the same kind of images? And I think that's what today, through our presentation, hopefully I'm able to give some insights into what it is and what I have learned, basically. And also I think basically understand and see, like I said, see the quality of images, and if you think those images are good enough, then great. I mean, then that's worth giving a shot.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm going to start.
Yes.
And then I'm going to keep. Okay, so obviously I've kept two cameras side by side and tried and seen. One is of course mirrorless, and the other one is a DSLR camera. And obviously you can see. I mean, just from from an outward, just from the outward looks itself, you can see that there is a fairly distinct difference between the two cameras, of course. A DSLR looks a lot more bigger, bulkier, heavier, and of course the mirrorless looks a lot more sleeker and thin by definition, and because of that lighter as well, by virtue of being sleeker, a lot more lighter. And even in terms of weight, like I said, weight, or in terms of size, it's a smaller camera. And you're probably wondering, I mean, and in terms of photographs, honestly speaking, like I said, it's not about mirrorless or whatever. I mean, it ultimately boils down to this. For example, was taken with a DSLR, and in the desert, little owl that we were talking about some time back, taken with a DSLR camera, but it's a good shot. It's a really nice shot. And the next shot is what we took, on one of these trips that me and I mentioned, which we saw. In fact, one of the little owls that we saw today. And you can see the clarity, the picture quality, and it's
You can make it full screen.
Sorry? Yeah,
It's not
I can. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So you can see the image, and you can get a sense from the image, that whether it is DSLR or mirrorless, you can get pretty much the same quality of an image with all those details, with all the sharpness, the color, and all of that. I think mirrorless technology has progressed to that extent where you can get a very, very comparable photos. One was taken from the top of the line DSLR, and this has been taken from the top of the line mirrorless camera. So I mean, I personally, I felt that the results were very comparable, and which is why I've been very comfortable to use it. So of course that's the first thing. But in terms of, if I get into very simple, in terms of a technical difference between the two, as the name suggests, the main difference between a mirrorless and the DSLR is that whole mirror that exists in a DSLR. If you see, there is a mirror that exists, that whenever you are looking into your viewfinder, what image you see is a reflection of the image. Basically, all the light falls on the mirror. It gets reflected onto a second mirror, which is what you are seeing. You are seeing that reflection in your viewfinder. And when you click the shutter button, what happens is that mirror gets lifted up and the image gets recorded on the sensor. Whereas in mirrorless, the technology that they've used is they have done away with that mirror. And what happens is that the light hits the sensor, and what you see is an electronic representation of that particular image, and then obviously you click it and it gets recorded on the sensor itself. Or rather, it gets recorded. So that just by eliminating that mirror, obviously there was a space that had to exist to keep that mirror, because it had to flip and then whatever. So that space is gone. So because of that space, you can see there's a huge difference itself in the camera and the size of the camera itself. So that's the main difference. And obviously at the initial days, what used to happen was the time that it would take for the electronic representation of that image to come into your viewfinder was long. But now, like I said, technology has progressed so much that you are almost instantly getting a representation of whatever light or whatever image is getting captured. You can see it on your viewfinder immediately. So that's one of the main differences. And like I said, because technology has progressed so much nowadays, it's really convenient and it's easy to use. And that the benefits of the mirrorless really start to kick in. Earlier, there were obviously these inherent flaws that existed in terms of the time that it would take for the image to get represented on the viewfinder, the accuracy of that particular image. Now all those things are, those have obviously, thanks to technology progressing so much, irrespective of the brand, those flaws have been ironed out. And I think that's why, that's basically what mirrorless and mirror DSLR is all about. Now, obviously, once we've understood that, again, these are the kind of images. I mean, even in an extreme region like the Arctic, you can get images with using a mirrorless camera. It's made to last, especially now the upper end or the higher end mirrorless models of any of the brands. They are built to last. They're built very durable. They're built solid, and they have all those features that a wildlife photographer needs, and which makes them, which means it becomes a very worthwhile consideration. Again, whether it is the Arctic or it's in Africa, where you are shooting, from the bottom of the ground, you can get images that are, you can see the detail here. You can see this image could have been captured. I mean, no one can really tell that this was shot with a mirrorless or it was shot with a DSLR. But obviously, as we go forward, I'm going to be talking about certain advantages that the mirrorless has over a DSLR, and I think that's what makes me sort of, it sort of replaced the DSLRs, or at least it's definitely an addition. So if I carry two bodies, one is definitely a mirrorless and the other one is a DSLR. So here's the kind of images that you can get. Again, polar bear in the Arctic, again shot with a mirrorless camera, and in fact a mirrorless lens as well. So there are also there's a new range of lenses as well. So obviously then the question that comes up really is it finally time to move on? I mean, is it time to change? Are we all in that place to switch over? And that's where I'm going to be talking about some of the things. I mean, so for example, the sensor itself, a lot of the mirrorless, whether it is any of the brands that exist currently in the market, they come with a high megapixel sensor, like 30 megapixels, 40 megapixels, 45 megapixels, and having a sensor that is this, usually what used to happen, even in the top end DSLR cameras, I think the top of the line DSLR cameras are at about 20 megapixels, 21 megapixels. But these mirrorless cameras, the top of the line mirrorless cameras are at around close to 30 to 45 megapixels. And that sort of makes a big difference, especially when you are trying to, you want to crop in and still have all those details in there. So, for example, this was shot with a mirrorless and with an 800 lens. And the easy thing that has happened is, I think one of the things earlier that used to happen was people would have the concern about investing in DSLR lenses and then not being sure of how they could use them with mirrorless and if there was any loss in quality or loss in performance. But now I think across brands, they have these adapters that exist, especially for the legacy brands like Canon and Nikon, and they have adapters that make it absolutely easy to use their older lenses or your older lenses with your existing new camera. And like I said, so that's what happens. Now, the sunbird is a very tiny bird. I mean, if you've seen it ever, it's a tiny, beautiful bird, very tiny though. And if you have a 40 or 45 megapixel camera, you can really crop it in, frame it the way you want to frame it, and you still manage to preserve a lot of the details of of the bird and the flower itself. So I think having a sensor of that kind definitely helps. Again, same with this. This is a grey crown crane. I think an introduced species here in the UAE, and for me, what really strikes out about these images is the details that exist. It's you honestly, if I saw it, and because this is a high key image, uh, for me, many times it looks more like a painting rather than an actual shot. And uh, and I think those details that exist in the image are just perfect, and I can get those images even after cropping it a bit, and I so that the subject is highlighted, especially nowadays with everyone wanting to post their content on social media. Having that ability to crop and still being able to keep the details intact is a great plus to have. Again, out in the desert, this is a gecko, and tiny little subject, probably this big. And I was shooting again with the lens with, I think this was a 70-200. It's not really a macro lens, even it's not even a macro lens, and yet I was able to crop. And I mean, like I said, the results are in the details and in the image itself. You can see tiny details in the eye of the gecko as well. So I think that's what, for me, is the is what having a sensor, a very high megapixel sensor makes that adds value to me. Again, bee eaters, beautiful birds. Catching them in flight is interesting, but they're not necessarily very close to you. This one again has been cropped significantly, and yet, like I said, because of that 45 megapixel that exists, you can still get a really nice image with all the details that you can post, or you can whatever print, and that's very interesting. That's
Nitin, we have a question.
Yes.
Does an adapter degrade the quality?
Not at all. In fact, the adapter is just a hollow ring. There is nothing inside that adapter.
Lens, or there is no mirror inside. I mean, there is no lens glass.
There is nothing. There's no glass. It's completely hollow. It's just an attachment that goes on to your to the ring, because obviously the rings are different from a DSLR. And I think in the case of Nikon, for example, even the ring size itself is different. So so which is why, but yeah, you don't lose quality, you don't lose any performance at all. In fact, it's just as good. And and I'll talk about how using those native lenses from DSLR with these new cameras, there are certain advantages also. We're talking about them as we go ahead. Now again, this is a tiny bat. I think this is a baby bat. Actually, it's a baby musket Oman tail bat. And honestly, you even in here you can't see, but if you zoom this in further, you can actually see even the little tiny hair of this baby bat, and that's the kind of details. I've not cropped it much, and it was taken in a dark cave sort of a place. And even those tiny details on the bat, you can really see them absolutely clearly. And I think that's which means it has all those things, right? It has the low light performance. It has a high, when you combine the other features of the mirrorless with this, it sort of adds up. And I think that makes...
That's another question we have regarding the light.
Yeah.
Like how good the new sensors for the mirrorless cameras affect the light?
So when you say, I mean, in terms of you want to know how their ISO
low light photography.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So in terms of low light photography, obviously the entry level cameras, I mean the entry level mirrorless might not be, but then that's the case even with DSLR, to be honest. The entry level DSLRs also can't really perform well in low light. But if you move on to the higher level or the top of the line mirrorless cameras, for many of the brands, their ISO performance is comparable in certain cases even to the top of the line, or let's put it one below the top of the line. That brand, that sort of range of cameras. So whatever the range is, whether it's in Nikon or Canon. Yeah, so that particular bracket that exists below the top of the line, that's the comparable range performance in terms of eyes. And honestly, that's really good. I mean, there are images that will go forward, and I'll show you of how it performs. Even the earlier bat image, it's actually darker. There was an external light, but it was still quite dark. So yeah, so honestly, I think the performance is really good in terms of, obviously, if you go into a really dark place, it's going to be hard. So it's, like I said, it's not yet in that place where it will replace the flagship model, but it will still give you a very good result that you can definitely use. That I can definitely tell you. Now, when it comes to wildlife photography, obviously frame rates make a big difference. What kind of FPS do you get? And obviously you have electronic shutter and a mechanical shutter. What kind of frame rates do you get? That becomes very crucial for a wildlife photographer when he's capturing a moment, whether it is a cheetah running, whether it's a bird in flight, anything for that matter. That if you want to freeze motion, you need to have a high frame rate. And I think mirrorless cameras across brands have managed to achieve that, going all the way from 9 and 10 frames per second to 20 frames a second using an electronic shutter. So I mean, and 20 frames per second is honestly more than what even the flagship models of some cameras can do. So that's a huge plus, having 20 frames per second. And I think that and those and when you're using, for example, when you're using electronic shutter, you are actually shooting silently. You're not disturbing the subject at all. I mean, I'm sure Nisha and Hermi, when we are in Mara or we are in anywhere else, having that silent shutter makes a huge difference. So I mean, not disturbing the animal at all can
very plus point.
Yeah. Or for example, today in the morning when we were shooting the owl, we can remain silent, but more often than ever, you'd always hear the shutter going like a machine gun, and that's gone with mirrorless. It's completely silent. Many times you're wondering whether you clicked or you didn't click at all.
That was one confusion which always used to happen me when I, try it with mirrorless, because sometimes you have that, you are mentally so addicted to this sound. When you press it and there is no sound, you get confused whether you captured it or not.
That is so. In fact, Hermi and me, we had this conversation, I think, a few weeks ago when we were, waiting at a point, and I said, "Damn, did I shoot?" But you're used to it. I mean, there are moments, but when you think of it, and then I look back at the images, and every frame was in focus. So, and I remember telling him that, hey, everything is in focus, and I didn't miss a single frame because I was shooting at, I think, 20 frames per second, and I think Hermi was shooting at about 16 frames a second. So I actually ended up getting more frames, and of course they were all in focus. So I said, yeah, I mean, that's a worthwhile trade-off. I didn't know, but I got the shot. So I think, in fact, this Marsh Harrier was taken on that same day when we were having that conversation. So this kind of an image will require a high frame rate. Plus, there was a lot of haze that day, which means you had to have your camera had to focus right and be able to freeze that moment. And I think it did a really good job. I mean, if Hermi was with me and we were just saying that today is not the perfect day for shooting because there's a lot of haze in the air, and but yet the camera with that high frame rate combining with all the other features that exist, manages to get you an image that is pretty.
We also have a question on the focusing.
Yes.
What is the focusing like in the new mirrorless cameras? Does the animal IAF work well?
Oh, it works. It works really well, actually. To be honest, I mean, there is a. I have some examples of the IAF. I mean, the working perfectly. I mean, all of these shots, honestly, because a lot of the top end mirrorless models, and have been sort of released in the recent past. Thanks to COVID, a lot of the experimentation that I've been doing with them has happened over the last few months during, ever since the lockdown has happened, and they are with birds in flight. So, the animal eye autofocus has been, in my opinion, phenomenal. I mean, right from the moment your camera is switched on, and it is it'll look for a subject, it'll look for your, if you're on, of course, on autofocus, it's
Yeah.
and it's really fast. I mean, depending on the lens you're using, for example, if you're using a 400 f2.8, or some a lens like that, the autofocusing becomes much more faster. When it of and it also, then you can combine it with things like ibis and stuff like that. So again, it's this is all shot using that eye focus. If you look at the eye of the bee eater, it's crisp, it's in focus, it's crisp. You can even see that little tiny bug that it's caught midair.
Yeah.
So this, of course, was taken, pre-lockdown, clearly, because this was in India. And again, having that high frames per second, 10 frames per second or 12 frames per second. This was before, I got to use cameras with the which have still higher frame rates. But even with that, you get you can manage to capture a frame. You can freeze a moment where everything, the subject, these two tigers playing in the water, everything is pretty much frozen in, and you get that entire impact that you're looking for. In fact, this was one image that I think Hermie and me, Hermie and me, in fact,
Yeah.
we took this image when we were in the jeep together. And again, um, you require, I mean, obviously cheetahs by nature, when you think of cheetah, you think of speed, and to freeze speed you need a high frame rate. So I mean, you can't, with the mirrorless, you can capture that, especially if you're shooting at whatever, even at 12 frames per second, it's a good enough. Like I said, if you compare a DSLR tier 2 camera against the mirrorless camera, the mirrorless camera actually has, in most cases, a better frame rate than a DSLR, and those DSLRs have been known to be used by some of the best wildlife photographers. So if they could manage with that, this is giving you a much better shot at getting these images. So, and then comes the thing that I don't think a lot of flagship models, even in DSLRs, have this, is IBIS, which is in-body stabilization. You can get, I think, up to 4 stops of IBIS. Obviously, the lenses have their own in-body stabilization, but when you combine that with the camera's own in-body stabilization, it obviously comes a lot more in handy when you're doing video. But even when you're doing stills, and especially if you're shooting handheld, I mean, that's the thing, right? The lightweight of the camera, and in some cases the lightweights of the lenses, make a big difference, right? You can actually shoot these birds handheld, and you can capture them. And if you notice, even the fish and the expression on the fish's mouth of being, that surprise, or whatever, sadness, or whatever you want to call it, it's it's very clear. He's got this, oh my god, what just happened, and you can capture that because you're combining all of that. You're combining that high frame rate, you're combining you have a 45 megapixel sensor, and you have an in-body stabilization on your lens as well as on your camera. Again,
So, Dr.
sorry.
Kim, I'm just asking, there is an issue of lag or delay in mirrorless cameras. Is it true?
So now that's what I said, that used to be an issue, no doubt about it. Especially if you look at the initial models that were released, there was a lag issue. But especially nowadays, that lag is is down to literally a fraction of a second, and even that to most photographers is not noticeable. I think even I have used mirrorless, like I said, for 2 years. Hermie, I think, has used it for much longer than me, and I think we can both vouch that that lag is almost non-existent now.
Yeah, in the initial releases, there were blackouts also. Like once you click the picture, and like if it's a continuous shot,
Yeah.
from first to second, you get a blackout.
Yeah.
So that will lose your frames. But now
Correct.
the latest cameras and all, I haven't found. Like,
Yeah.
That's something that I have also noticed. In C7 is something which I have, and but where I have used C6 as well. If we're comparing C7 with C6, that's the plus point I see in C6.
Correct. Because
yeah,
that I think, as especially with the legacy brands that we are talking about, Nikon, Canon, whatever, I think they're only going to get better from here, because
Yeah.
they've already learned from the experiences of other brands that are in the market, who've obviously forayed into this much earlier and who've already mastered that. So they've learned from them, and they are obviously implementing that. So honestly, that lag issue is
yeah.
almost
Before we couldn't even imagine a 40 megapixel camera can give 9 FPS or 10, 12 FPS.
yeah, exactly. And now it's giving that kind of and that's enough, honestly, unless you're shooting, I mean, even for a large range of bird photography, having a 9 fps is good enough.
Yeah.
It did it. And especially, I mean, Nisha is the queen of Mara, so she can tell us that, with 9 fps you can easily shoot on lions and whatever.
See, when it comes to FPS, Hermie and me, we used to shoot it with the basic models again, uh, action. So it's anything which is above 5 is going to make your life so easy.
Exactly. That's the point. I mean, so 9 FPS and above is more than enough. Unless you're shooting like something that's really fast, then fine. And if you are choosing that challenge, then you might as well have the gear for that.
Yeah.
So again, for example, this I shot it right outside my office. For me, I think having that a light camera and a lightweight camera makes a big difference. Because it's almost a few hundred pounds, not few hundred pounds, few hundred grams lighter than a DSLR, and that is a huge difference when you combine it with the new lenses. So this, for example, shot at with an 800 lens. You have that when you combine the IBIS and the high frame rates together, and this has not been cropped much, but again, this picture and this bird itself, I actually wrote down to Nisha saying, I remember one of her images, and I said, I've always been eager to get this bird in flight after seeing that one of her images. So yeah, I mean, I think you can really get some very beautiful images with the mirrorless, and it performs, again, right outside my office, I sit and watch these guys doing these who's foraging or burrowing into the ground, and trying to bring these worms out. And this is what you can get. I mean, the details are crystal clear. You can print this image out. You can make a nice large print out of it. I think it's thanks to the, like I said, like Hermie was saying, thanks to the 40 megapixels or whatever, you can print this image. This is the final output image is about 10 MP or 8 MP. So again, sunbird, shot high FPS. The bird is really fast. I mean, I remember, when we were shooting this bird, you that lag doesn't exist. So someone had asked earlier about the lag. We've got multiple images from this range, this series of this bird, and almost all those images we knew that we were getting them right. So this is, of course, sorry.
No.
So this is this bird is slower in comparison to, let's say, a sunbird or something. Which is why even with your even in anything above 5 FPS, you will have an opportunity, and you can blow it up. It's a a mute swan or whatever it is called is something that is a beautiful image, right? I mean, you can print it, you can keep it, and even for social media, because that seems to be the norm nowadays. For social media, an image like this will always do well. Face and eye track detection. So, I mean, of course, I'll go through this image, but this is what I was talking about. The camera took less than a second to, and actually, I've only picked 6 or 7 of these images, but I think I have about 20 images of this bird, crossing, coming from one end of the lake, going across, and moving across, and every single frame is in focus. It's absolutely crisp. The camera took less than a second to autofocus and catch the subject, catch the bird, and thereafter all I did was press the shutter, and that's it. Everything is in focus. So to show you here, obviously, I'm not sure how much of detail you can see here, but trust me, that I know, I can tell you for a fact, and I'm happy to share this file if someone ever wants to see it. It's every single frame is absolutely in focus. You can pick any frame you want, and I've just picked out 6 or 7 of them, but everything is in focus. The entire bird is in focus. Its wings, it's the color, all of it is. And these are, I've not done any processing on these images. I've just picked them up and put it out as it is. So those are those images that I talked about there, and that's where that eye focus, it holds the focus. I mean, it doesn't drop the subject. You might have birds moving through, but it will keep tracking your subject till the very end. I think that's a huge plus when you're shooting. And I think anyone who shoots birds or even animals in motion will tell you having that kind of tracking is a huge plus. And it's been talked about. It's not just me who's saying it, but everyone who's used to it will tell you about this. Again, sunbirds. I'm sorry, there are a lot of the same species, but since we've been through COVID, and the kind of a lot of the images are limited to the kind of species that you find here in the UAE. So this bird would go behind that flower, come back up again go back, come back up again, and every time it would move back up, the camera would continue to track it, irrespective of whether it went behind and sort of out of it. It never lost focus. So and I think that's
right.
yeah, that's a huge plus. I don't think earlier when I used to shoot with just a DSLR, the autofocus good, yes, but not like amazing. And now right now it is amazing. I mean, I've shot this with a lens that was actually f11, which means the depth of field is actually a very deep depth of field, and you have every possibility of catching everything else except the bird. But that animal or face and eye detection really works wonders on the cameras, on the new mirrorless cameras. Again, in terms of autofocus positions and focus points, mirrorless cameras in general have a lot more focus points. They literally have focus points across the entire sensor, vis-a-vis DSLR cameras. DSLR cameras, if you know, usually most of the focus points are stacked in the center.
Yes.
And mirrorless, on the other hand, have focus points spread across, and and the speed at which, of course, a lot of them use a lot of new different technology. Whatever you call they, I'm not going to get into specific brands and the technology, but they have the latest technology in terms of autofocus points and how sensitive those points are and how receptive those points are. So when you are shooting anything, you can compose your images very differently. You can compose your images as you're shooting because you have the whole frame to compose it with. Otherwise, you don't have that kind of flexibility in terms of composition when you are shooting with a DSLR because of the number of focus points that exist. And if you go further behind and you go to some of the lower end cameras, the focus points are still much lesser. Basically, in my opinion, these focus points help in terms of composing your image. You get a lot more freedom to compose the image as you are shooting itself because of where those focus points are. You move the focus point to the extreme right or to the left and compose your image accordingly. Again, all of these images at least the last two images were shot in the UAE. You can choose right from the start how you want to compose it. Of course, my idea over here was always to sort of have the sun a lot lower, but you know, me and me have a joke that whenever we decide to go after this oryx, the sun decides to has other plans. So, but yeah, I still kind of like the image that it came out of it. This is the nice bouquet green background that exists over here with the bee eater. And like I said, the speed at which all those focus points are extremely receptive. So when you are playing with autofocus, and the subject enters any of those any of in any of the entire sensor, it'll the speed at which your autofocus works and it picks up, and the subject is really fast. It's not really clustered to the center. So the chances of getting a good image is much more higher. Again, from a compositional point, you can decide how you'd like to compose it, and shoot accordingly. The osprey again. Like I said, of course, this has been cropped a bit more, but yeah, it helps to have a lot of focus points, and especially at covering all the corners. Now, someone asked about ISO capability, and that's another very crucial point when it comes to shooting with mirrorless, when it comes to shooting in the wild, because very often just before sunrise or just after sunset, as the light begins to go down, shooting images becomes much more harder. This, I think we had shot at around around 6:30, I think 6:37 in the Mara, after the sun had set. It was shot at a very high ISO. In fact, it was shot at about I think it was 8,000 or whatever ISO, or was it 10,000? I'm not sure. But it's a full frame image, and there's not much done over here. But the sharpness of course, you will find a bit of graining, but that's not something that you can't correct in once you get it back to to Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever you use to edit your photos. You can definitely use it, and the clarity that existed in those images and you still get a really nice image that comes out of it.
Again, and how is the dynamic range of
in terms of how much you can pull out of it once you go back into processing? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can. That's what I said. So the dynamic range for, again, I'll be very specific here. I won't say this is it's the gold standard across all the mirrorless range. You'll still have to go for the higher end of those to get a really good dynamic range. You can, like I said, you can pull out a lot of colors and pull back on a lot of stuff in post processing, because the raw image is obviously, if you're shooting in raw, you can pull out a lot from the image once you go back and put it onto Photoshop or Lightroom. So yeah, it has these cameras, especially the higher end versions of them, have very good dynamic range. Again, a shot that, to be very honest, it's Nisha knows this shot better than me, so there's really nothing much to say about it. It's one of my most memorable shots. I just love the shot. And the story behind it itself is something that I can't ever forget. So, but yeah, like I said, it's a low light image. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nisha, by the time we got to this point, and towards the end of it, the light was completely,
yes.
We were at the end of the day and the light was almost gone. Yep. So, but you still able to pull out. In fact, I think all three of us sat together when we were editing this image, and I think you could pull back quite a bit from the image itself.
That's one thing which I have noticed in most of the, most of the latest cameras when it comes to mirrorless, and even if you're seeing something like a grayish in the raw file, the moment you are processing it, you get almost every details.
Yeah, yeah, you do. Once you sit back and try and process it, the amount of details that you can pull out of those images is even the sky. I mean, more often than ever, a lot of us in Dubai, especially in the afternoons when you're shooting, the skies are very, very dull. But you can still, because of the haze or whatever you want to call it, and the colors around, you can still manage to pull out a lot. Now, this was taken at past sunset in Sri Lanka. It was shot at, I think about, yeah, it was definitely shot at 10,000 ISO or above. Of course, I have reduced the noise on the image in Photoshop, but you can see the image. It's a full frame image. There's a lot of clarity to it. It's an image that you can definitely use. I mean, the colors are great, so that probably answers your question on dynamic range as well. So it has some really nice color. Like the rosettes of the leopard are very distinct, and it's a cub, and it's a female cub.
Eyes, everything is beautiful.
Yeah. So the reason I showed this image is because this was shot with a lens that was shooting at f11. I mean, and because it was shooting at f11, you had to shoot minimum at ISO. Even in the daytime, you were shooting at around ISO 10,000 to get that high frame rate, and yet there's almost no graining in the image. Of course, the light helps, but I'm saying if you're shooting with a lower end DSLR or even a normal DSLR, if you're shooting at f11 or f12 and you're bumping up your ISO, you'll have some amount of graining in the image, and you might lose a little bit of the sharpness in the image. And if you try to sharpen it further, there'll be more graining. But this particular image, I mean, I'm not saying it's the best image, but it's still, it's right there in terms of, it's a crisp image. You can definitely use it.
Yeah, when it comes to the point which you are discussing about, definitely that play a lot of role.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing about all these cameras is, I mean, all the ranges, what's going to happen? Yeah, this is our image from today.
Oh, that's a beauty.
that's the owl that we saw today.
That's the fandom.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
the fandom of the desert. I mean, I can just.
Man.
I know. And full frame again. Like I was shooting with a 400. Yeah, so that's the other interesting thing. You can in fact, that's what you were discussing today. I was shooting with a 400 with a 1.4 extender, and the camera itself. I could switch from the full frame mode to mirrorless. I mean, to a crop sensor mode, which means I got an additional 1.6 crop without really losing anything on the f-stop. So which means I was still shooting at f4.5, and I had almost 800 and 800 plus on the. So this image is about, I think, 12 MP. It's a 12 megapixel, no, 12. What do you say? MB file.
Megabyte.
12 megabit file, and I can blow this up into a full-fledged poster, and the details are crisp. Even that little hair on top of its ears is absolutely clear. So the thing about the lenses, I mean, all of these cameras are now going to have their own lenses as well. So at some stage, if you'd like to invest into new glass, you'd like to invest into new, and those also pair really well with the camera itself. I mean, going forward, they will become lighter as well. I mean, my prediction is some of them already are, and some of them will get more lighter as the days go by. So
we have a question from Dr. Anand. Is there any difference in the weight of F-mount lenses and the S-series lenses? Basically, he's asking about Nikon lenses.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I can answer this.
Yeah.
Uh, the what they are saying is there is a 30%, 30 to 35 percentage less weight for the S series lens. The S series is the latest mirrorless lenses.
Yeah.
So there is a huge difference in the light and the weight as well.
And trust me that, especially if I don't know if doctor is doing a lot of bird photography, but if he is, then having that weight difference is something else. When you're shooting birds, that flexibility that it gives you to lift and move the lens really fast along with the bird, in terms of whether it's trying to keep up with the pace of the bird. Having a light lens that combines with a light camera, it is a life changer. I mean,
I'm really waiting for that move from Nikon on a 400 mm 2.8 or on a 600 mm.
yeah.
Been interesting this since the rest of the brand came up with this lightweight option.
Yeah. But like I said, I think it's just a matter of time
Yeah.
when you will definitely, almost all these cameras have. I mean, if you read up the news and you see the patents that they have taken, it's just a matter of time when they will start coming out with these ultralight lenses, and which will go specifically. The only thing is, they're not going to be, in more or less, they're not going to be backward compatible, which means you will not be able to use them with DSLR. So that's where the real takeaway, or the last point that I'd like to make is, if today you are thinking of investing in a new gear, maybe you'd like to consider mirrorless, because the lenses that are going to come in the future, or the where all these companies are making their investments, it's in mirrorless. So that's the space you'd like to be in, because whatever it is, whether it is your wide angle lenses, whether it's your telephoto lenses, whether it's whatever your prime lenses, zoom lenses, any of them, you will you even the macro lenses for that matter, all the companies are making their investment into mirrorless. So think and be very careful, because while you might be able to use your current DSLR lenses on mirrorless, you will not be able to do the reverse.
Yeah.
So you need to be, I mean, and like I said, hopefully these images are enough to prove to you that you can get great images, yeah, with the mirrorless camera. And it is only going to get better from here. It's not.
There is absolutely no doubt with anybody who is planning to invest on a new camera, go for mirrorless, because that's going to be the future.
Yeah, I mean, in the past when I've done sessions, I've had questions like, no, but how can you justify the cost, that there is a additional cost? But the way you have to look at it is, you have to look at it from a slightly long-term perspective, because if you buy a DSLR that's cheaper today, and you don't in the future have lenses that can go with it, it's going to become an obsolete investment. And you will then eventually, if you want to continue photographing, you will then at some stage have to move on into buying a mirrorless, which means you would have effectively spent twice the amount of money.
So we have a question: would DSLR continue in the future?
See, the thing is, film cameras, there are people who still use film cameras, so that's going to happen. It's in gradual progress with film to DSLR, now DSLR to mirrorless. I'm sure there will be some other technology in future.
And I think DSLR, and it's not that DSLR is going to die out, because there is still a huge amount of people who are very happy with their set of gear and lenses, and a lot of people like shooting. I mean, and like I said, by no means am I saying that the DSLR is out. It can produce fantastic images, and in certain cases even better than the mirrorless. So I don't think the mirrorless is out and is over with, but yeah, the investments are definitely going to be in the direction of mirrorless, because that's the future.
Yeah.
Again, the
That's a beautiful image.
Sorry.
That's a beautiful image.
Thank you. So the Golden Boys, part of the five boys of five Cheetah Coalition, five Musketeers, whatever they called us. Again, that's it. So yeah, if you want to travel with me, Paws Trails. You already know them.
Yeah.
If you want to follow me, that's where I am on Instagram. I'm going to escape from here and come to the. Yep, there we are. So yeah, I mean that's it. So I don't know whether that was there was enough justification for mirrorless and
That's it. Technically, as well as experience with images. Technically, there are people who can explain things, but until unless you see the result, what is the output, it's quite difficult to justify. So in your case over here from Dubai, you have shown a limited number of species. We're talking about ISO performance to FPS to eye tracking. I think everything has been explained along with the size of the camera with comparing to DSLR with mirrorless. What more can you explain?
yeah, I mean, uh, I remember, I think it was when I came to Dubai, I think 7, 8 years ago, I was in one of these exhibitions, and I remember that time only Sony was in this space. Sony is obviously I mean, needless to say, irrespective of which brand you use, everyone knows that Sony is
The
they are
master case, yeah.
master of mirrorless. So I remember those guys would struggle to explain to people, try the mirrorless, and I don't know what they had, this alpha series that they had launched, and they were trying desperately, and today everyone's so curious about mirrorless, what's it doing, and
In fact, we have a question on that. Is the Nikon mirrorless equal to Sony mirrorless? People go for Sony.
Yeah, it's going to be. See, initially we all had this problem, and any new camera or any new lens is going to come up in the market. Definitely, they will take a little bit of time to do R&D and learn from the mistake, learn from others. So that learning curve was there, but then things have changed. Even Nikon or Canon is in the market for last couple of years, and that have given such a huge leap towards
All the brands are going to produce, like they are equally
good.
equally good products.
in fact, if I'm not wrong, this year's wildlife photographer of the year, his image is from a Nikon mirrorless camera.
Mirrorless
Yeah.
camera. Yeah.
So
Z7 and 50 lens that
yeah, so if you can
Tiger
get an image that
Have you used R5? Because there were a couple of questions on someone about R5 and what's your opinion on R5?
Yeah, I have used the R5 quite a lot. It's a nice camera. Okay, there is no doubt about it. Currently Canon has made I think it's done some great work in terms of really lifting itself up in terms of technology. The autofocusing, IBIS, all of them on the R5 is really good. Maybe there is some work to be done on the video part of it. If you're into videography, maybe video. There is still work that needs to go into it. It can shoot 8K. Obviously, it's touted as an 8K camera, but it's not. I won't say it's the best there is out there for an 8K shot.
Okay.
But in terms of stills, I think it's really good. It's probably one of the best that there is.
That's right. Yeah, because I heard a lot of buzz around R5.
Sorry?
I heard a lot of buzz around R5.
There is. I think just the specs of that camera, like I was saying earlier, can put it. And incidentally, it was launched just after the 1D Mark III, which is beast of a model. You've used, all of you have used in the past, and after that, to be able to stand up to that and compare, there are certain features of that are actually better than the 1DX Mark III. So that's quite a statement in itself.
Yeah.
We have a comment from Shaista. You have answered all my questions. No one could explain the difference so well. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Shaista. So yeah, I mean that's it, I suppose.
Yeah, that was a fabulous. I mean, you put things in a very simple way. It was very straightforward, and that makes everybody's life so easy.
We have a comment from Amit. It was hard to follow the birds on flight with older models, but with the latest models, it's close to none. and easier to follow actions and flight shots.
It is, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which brand you're using. If you figure out how to use a camera well, you can extract crazy images out of any camera, whatever, mirrorless, DSLR, anything. You might have the best camera and still come away without having an image.
Yeah.
So
That's true. Yeah, the
I mean,
camera definitely play a role, but then end of the day, it's you who is
Practice.
behind the camera.
and I can say that because I've done that. I've actually come out. You like I said, I keep learning. So you come back sometimes out of the situation saying, "Shit, I had the best gear and I didn't do it," and then you come out with a very mediocre gear with some fantastic images. So
Yeah.
it's all. I can see Fayaz Bhai also is there. So
Yeah.
Yeah, Asbai is one of our regular viewer. He will not miss any sessions.
it's always nice to see him. So
Yeah.
anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank
And
you.
thank you so much for the wonderful session again.
Thank you so much. Hermie and me, of course, as always, will continue to explore and
Yeah.
share.
And also come with your stories, okay?
We'll share the stories with you, of course.
In fact, we have some bigger plans coming up.
Yes, like some really big plans coming up. So where you can see, of course, you will share images. We are
Well,
not-
I have big
We'll
plans.
share bit by bit.
No,
Plans
when
are not one way, okay?
you decided to go and sit there. We didn't tell you.
Hello. Beautiful. I have absolutely no complaint over here. It's just that I'm not going out.
But it's
You can say
fantastic.
it's beautifully unexplored.
Yeah. Even I'm walking around is beautiful. So imagine if I'm going to explore, but you never know. I have plans. You wait for next month, man.
But I think COVID is so. What COVID has done is, I think it's helped us appreciate our surroundings a lot more. A lot more than what we would earlier. I think
That's
so.
true.
I think we would just. I mean, I remember at the start of it, Hermie and me would grumble about how we never got to go anywhere, and oh my God, it's really sad. Of course, we still grumble about that. It's not that, but I think we now sort of started focusing so much more on what we can do here,
Yes.
what's there to explore, and
That's the basic human nature, right? The moment you try to give importance to the place where you are and accept and appreciate things around, life
In
become very
fact, between us, me and Nisha, we have done that. Fortunately, we have done that from the beginning of our
Yes.
photography journey. Like the pivot wheel was our second home. Yeah. So we know the value of what you get next to your house.
Of course, I think I realized it now because I was fortunate to travel earlier, and now that's gone. And but now I remember seeing Nisha's image a few days ago of that squirrel and the crow. I think, right? If I'm not
Yeah.
wrong. And it's that image. Even that image. It's a moment that you see right outside, but on an every other
Right.
day, you would have been boarding a flight to Kenya or to somewhere, and
And
you
you
would have,
may not get it.
passed that moment without seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true because for me, it's not the species.
Yeah.
Definitely, it's species. Yeah, if you get a record shot of a unseen or not that seen species, definitely it's an interesting thing. But more than an experiment, more than anything else, for me, when it comes to photography, it's the moment. Any species, be it a crow, be it a butterfly, or anything on this planet Earth, play a major role in their life. So if you can capture a fabulous moment, nothing else matters.
So I think what Hermie and me have understood from this session is because I think Nisha will continue focusing on crows and squirrels, and we'll go after the snow leopards and the other species.
I didn't say anything like that. Don't try to read between lines. I said, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you again. See you soon.
See you in a few days.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Where do I exit? Yeah. Okay. That's it. Yeah.